Hello, welcome to the Leading with Integrity editing studio. It's that time of year now in the UK where it gets dark, it gets gloomy. So I'm wearing a hoodie. I've got a large hot coffee with me, and we're going to dive into some of my favourite moments, the highlights, if you like, in the last 4 years of the podcast as we celebrate today reaching 200 episodes. So you can watch along with me. We're going to look at some of the reviews and kind words that we've had about the podcast as well over those years. And I'm not going to lie, it's been a bit of a difficult episode, this one, just because there's 198 episodes, not including the 2 today. And I've really genuinely enjoyed every single one of them. So picking out the highlights, in inverted commas, I've actually really struggled with. You've heard me say that before, I'm sure, when I did that clip show for Boxing Day last year. So I'm sure you don't have a lot of sympathy for me. But anyway, hopefully I've been able to pick a few clips and a few old episodes that you maybe haven't heard before or that we've not covered a lot. In fact, I've gone all the way back to year one, the first 6 months, the first half a dozen episodes that I ever did. There's clips in this episode now that I've not heard since I edited them some years ago. So I may have some thoughts on those as we go. But either way, hopefully it's a bit of fun, something a bit different, and a nice precursor, a nice bonus to hitting the 200th episode, which will be coming out, if all goes well, in about an hour. So, let me get my headphones on and we'll dive into the edit.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast.
Leadership talk for the modern manager.
With your host, David Hatch.
Okay, so this first clip, I believe, is from episode 3. So this was with my very good friend, Ben Porter, who is at the time was a freelance wedding photographer and in fact is still today a freelance wedding photographer. So it's obviously going well for him. And an odd fact about Ben and I've known him about 25 years now. But before that, when we were very small, little babies, our parents were neighbours. So we've kind of been in and around each other's lives for our entire lives, which is a bit of a weird one. But anyway, so let's play the clip. What is your favourite or the best thing about what you do?
That's a good question. I think in a lot of ways it goes back to that whole being there on the happiest of days. You know, it's just a great thing. Every conversation I have with a client tends to be really positive. There's no lack of good things to be said. Everyone's excited. They're just looking forward to seeing what you do with capturing the day. And I adore my handover sessions. So when I have finished the job, I will tend to meet with my clients and show them their images. And I love being there for that because it's that first time they're looking through the memories, as it were, of their wedding and what they get to keep. Because at the end of the day, when you've got married, there are 3 things you walk away with: a bit of paper, some rings, and the photos. Everything else is very fleeting. It tends to...
What about your partner for the rest of your life? That's a pretty big one as well, surely.
Of course. But as a couple, the things that you take away are the rings, the paperwork, and the photos. So, you know, it's worth investing in them in that way. But being there for that first viewing, I find very rewarding. I want to see people enjoying those images, and you know, so far so good. I've not had a session where people have looked through them and been disappointed. Everyone's always very happy, very complimentary, and it's just nice to see them reliving that day. You know, it's only been a few weeks or 6 to 8 weeks down the line, but already that people will be saying, "Oh yeah, no, I missed that on the day, or oh, I remember that happening, I've forgotten that, and it's nice. It's really nice. Definitely one of my favourite bits.
I love hearing stories from solopreneurs in particular about why they do what they do and what about it they enjoy so much. And I think, Ben set the benchmark pretty early there in episode 3 ever. So this next clip is from Simon Hawthorne, who spent a lot of time in fact, I think he still works for Transport for London, but in the civil service, the public sector. So we had a really great conversation. I still remember this one today. It was episode 4 of the first season. And we had a great conversation about those kind of differences and similarities between the public and the private sector. So, yeah, let's play this clip as well. This is one of the early ones where it was audio only as well. I did swap back and forth a little bit between doing video and not doing video back then.
What good leaders in public organisations get right is they protect their staff from unwarranted criticism. I think every organisation has some warranted criticism and can do better, and helps to create an environment where they can look after them. What they get right is by listening to their staff and creating an environment where they can flourish. So we talked earlier on about, I think it was Apple you said, who imposed this idea of hybrid working, which, a lot of people like.
Yeah.
But if you don't listen, then you're going to get pushback. And I think a good leader, and certainly my current boss's boss, does that, listens to staff. That is something which potentially big organisations can do better, both in the public sector but I think more private sector, is getting the CEOs and the managing directors and everyone else to go and just talk to the people at the bottom. We need to get better at connecting. It's a network, everything is connected. And if you can create an environment where the apprentice feels quite happy to talk to the director about something, you get this nice cross-pollinisation of ideas, and you can challenge the status quo. You can go, why do we do it this way? Why don't we do it that way? So if you can create an environment where people feel capable of saying that is a good leader. That is someone who can make sure that we don't get stuck doing the same thing and spinning our wheels.
That's a great point from Simon there, and it's a recurring theme actually that comes up quite a lot over the years about those leaders who get too high up in an organisation and too far removed from the actual work, and they forget to occasionally go down. What is it the kids say these days? And touch grass, but actually in a more intentional leadership practice where you are talking to people at all levels of the organisation and making sure you do actually know what's going on and how things work. Far too easy to forget about that, I think. So that's it for season 1. We will come back to it a bit later in this episode. I've got one more clip to share, I think, possibly, technology depending. So as it was quite a short episode, we'll bundle it together with the second year of the podcast, which was when things really took off. It was in this second year that we moved to weekly episodes instead of the seasonal format. So I called it season 2, but it really is year 2. So this was the 2022 episodes. We'll start off with a clip from my conversation with Elena Pastori, who was, and I think still is, as far as I know, a career and leadership coach. It wasn't intentional. I didn't plan to do it. It was just kind of, well, this is comfortable, this is easy, I can rely on the paycheck. It's not the most exciting thing I've ever done, but it pays the bills. And you blink and 10 years have gone past.
Yeah, I think comfort is the biggest thing that can lead to complacency in your career and, in other areas of life as well. And even when you know that the grass can be greener or that, you should move on, it's the comfort of knowing what to expect, even if it's something that's not so great, because we as humans like to be all-knowing to the best of our abilities. And we like to be able to predict, and we like to know what's going to happen. And there was this very interesting quote that I read just, a month or so into COVID when the world shut down. And it said, it might have been an HBR or a New York Times article or something, but it said, there's a certain level of predictability in this world. The sun will rise, the next day will come, and so many other things that we believe to be true or would exist that COVID just totally pushed to the side and said, nope, not today. And I think based on this article and just my own thinking is that we try to predict or we try to understand or find reasons because we find comfort in having the answers. And, that goes really deep. And I think that that is a huge reason as to why do we stay with what's comfortable when we know it's not the best? Because it's predictable, because we know what to expect, and something else might be worse. This might not be so bad after all.
It's funny at the beginning of that clip where I talked about blinking and 10 years have gone past. I sort of feel like that with this podcast and with my business. I feel like I blinked and now I've been in business for 6 years this week and 4 years on the podcast as well. It's funny how time seems to get faster the older you get. I'm not going to dwell on that though. So the next clip, this is actually episode 13. So this was before the one we've just heard. But this was with Greg Offner. And I think he was the first professional speaker that I had on podcast. He does all kinds of brilliant. I've been following him ever since. And I love watching the clips from some of the talks that he does and seeing ever growing audiences, it seems, that he speaks in front of. But you can definitely tell that he was a pro based on his sound quality and his microphone setup and everything, which was way better than what I had at the time. But anyway, let's play this next clip.
There's a guy named Mark Bowen who studies body language, and his work fascinates me. It's about looking for incongruence. Where is there incongruity between who you usually are and then how you show up this one day? It's those little cracks, those little breaks of who the real Gregory is or who the real David is that comes pouring out that we go, I saw that. And we latch onto that when we see it in a leader, when a leader sees it in their people. I wish that weren't there though. I wish that more people were bringing just who they are into the conversation. And we feel it when we're getting authenticity from somebody and we're really connecting with them. There's I hate to be like, frou-frou, but it's like there's a vibe that you just pick up on someone. It's like, that's you. That's the real you. That's what I want to see more of. I love that, getting to see that of people in the piano bar. It led to some sales calls, right? Because I had the jobs at the same time. And it was always funny that, of course, the little alcohol's involved. Yeah, so given. But sometimes the person you met at the piano bar, who then you met in a business setting, is like a totally different person. And you're just like, wow. How tough must that be to camouflage? I mean, I know how tough it was because I did it for a really long period of time, but it was always fascinating to see it in others.
I feel like we were a little bit spoiled with that explanation of authenticity there and such a great example from his career experiences too. So this next clip is from episode 23. So again, just before the Elena episode that we heard just now. But I chose this one because the guest, Belinda, had some really interesting experiences, but this particular clip was such a great story about how leaders take on board feedback or don't. And given how difficult it must have been for the leader in this story as well, it was quite a good story. It stuck in my memory, and I thought of it almost immediately when I started putting this episode together.
I saw a leader that received some very confronting feedback in their 360-degree responses. And basically, it was a leader that had very low emotional intelligence and almost zero self-awareness. Basically, they found themselves in the position that their entire team had indicated that it was terrible working for them and that they were very unhappy, that their style wasn't working, that the way that they communicated wasn't working. Basically, every aspect of their leadership wasn't working. And that leader absolutely broke down over that. And 360-degree feedback is it's a fantastic tool, but it can also be very, very confronting for some people when they don't have a higher level of emotional intelligence and they don't have a high degree of self-awareness. And so this leader really struggled with that, but they didn't sort of spend time wallowing in their self-pity, even though, that feedback was very challenging for them to sort of face up to, but they did face up to it. And so they did all of the things that they thought they needed to do, right? So they spent some time just sort of figuring out what it all kind of meant. Like, how did I end up in this place? How is my perception so different to what my people are telling me? They went and did some coaching. They did a personal development course. They did all of these things. They invested so much into their own personal growth. And they did something that I think is really admirable. And they sat down with their entire team, as a collective, and they thanked them for their honest feedback. And they were honest, and they said that they found it extremely confronting, that they felt very upset that is, the result of their leadership. But they actually went as far as to tell their team all of the steps that they were taking to improve their leadership. That degree of honesty, and I don't know that everybody would feel comfortable going to that sort of extreme, but that degree of honesty and being so upfront about wanting to change and how they were changing really helped them to rebuild trust in a team that was absolutely suffering. They saw the effort that leader was putting in, and it absolutely changed that team and turned that dynamic right around.
Such a great story, that one. The next clip almost needs no introduction. Always one of my favourite guests, one of my favourite one-to-ones at networking as well. Hard to describe him. Mr. Rory Berry, the Lego aficionado, the staff retention expert, the campaigner against the miserable old semi-drunken Christmas party, in inverted commas, that so many offices get wrong. See also the David Brent version of The Office. Always great energy talking with Rory. We always have a good laugh. And actually, it's been far too long since I last saw him. So this might have to be my reminder to hit him up for a drink or something. Anyway, so this clip was actually from his first appearance on the podcast, episode 28, back in 2022. And I think we released this one in the run-up to Christmas as part of my annual daily episodes for a week of Christmas insanity, which I'm trying to cut back on this year. It is a problem I do have, I'm aware.
I've often been heard to say, and I say it all the time, inspiration fades under the perspiration of doing. It's easy to get inspired. How many people go to a seminar, a conference, a motivational speaker, and they go, yeah, we're going to change everything. Then they get back to the office the next day and Mrs. Smith phones in with a complaint and Billy from down the road has an issue, and all of a sudden everything's gone out the window, back of the head, ears, and nothing's changed. Whereas when you've got that accountability and that support, and sometimes, as I've said to clients frequently, I believe enough for both of us today. You've just got to trust me, because they might have absolutely lost belief in the process, or themselves, or something's happened, or a scary thing's happening. So like, this is terrifying heart moments. This is the right decision. We've agreed this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with, I guess, any kind of big change management, especially when you're looking at culture and personalities, perhaps, and the human side of it. It's the key, as you say. It's in the longevity, it's in the accountability, and you've got to, a year at least. Yeah, I mean, the classic example for me is, I think back to, we used to do the company away days. It's like the boss knows that somebody's not happy, so we're going to have an away day. Everyone will get a meal out. We'll have some inspirational chats for a day, and everyone will feel better. And then inevitably what happened is you're back in the office the next day, nothing's changed. Or there's a new beanbag in the corner, or a new house plant on a shelf somewhere, or something like that. And it's exactly that problem, isn't it? And trying to get past that, which obviously is what you do day in, day out. So I don't need to tell you about it.
but I think that the other thing is, if you are, I call it conscience washing because it's just the descriptor I use. But the staff know when that's happening. Like, everybody knows that we're all going out because Jimmy had a whinge. And so they're trying to buy us with this grub. Like, people aren't stupid, as much as on occasion people want to assume that people are stupid. The staff know what's going on when things like that happen. So if it's properly executed, properly communicated, and then the staff receive it in the way that it's intended. If it's just, right, compulsory, everyone's coming out for this thing, and we're going to have fun. Okay, well, I'm already not having fun because you told me I have to have fun.
I do enjoy that clip. It's fun to reminisce and have a whinge, as Rory says. So this final clip from season 2, 2022, was with David Hollenbach III. Now, this conversation, again, it was very early on in the podcast journey. It has always stuck in my memory because he was so open, honest, transparent about his experiences with things like PTSD and working in the fire service, but also like in a positive way in taking it forward, in applying leadership lessons and talking about why he does what he does today. It was probably one of the earliest really meaningful conversations that I remember having about things outside of just like leadership.
You know, the book started off as a leadership book. I started writing it in 2010 after the death of my brother. And it was something that I was very passionate about, leadership development. And I felt like I could add some value to that arena in the fire service. And I was writing this book for years, and I would put it away because I would get frustrated, and have that imposter syndrome. Like, who would read this? I really, you second guess yourself, and I haven't really achieved anything worthy of somebody reading my work, and that was nonsense. I had achieved quite a bit, and however, it would have been much like any number of leadership books, just theory, philosophy, maybe some experience, but it was really focused on doing everything right. This is how you want to be, blah blah blah. And I really didn't talk about the mistakes that everybody makes, the mistakes that I made, the lessons that I learned. And I've found that the most valuable lessons that I've learned in my career all stemmed from huge mistakes that I made. And looking back, when I was responsible for holding people accountable for mistakes that they made, I mean, in some instances, I was kind of hard on people. And then in other instances, I was fairly understanding. And that, I would say that was later on in my career when I really wanted people to make decisions on their own. When time was of the essence, I wanted them to feel comfortable making decisions, even if they weren't exactly sure. If they made a mistake, we could address that at the time, but not making a decision could be detrimental.
Such a great example there of the importance of self-reflection, but also being intentional in your practice of leadership. So before we move on to some clips from season 3, it occurs to me that I've never really looked at, well, not so much looked at, but talked about some of the amazing reviews that we've had from you listeners over the years. So there's over 40 of them on Apple Podcasts alone. So I thought it might be fun to just skip through a few and maybe read out one or two that made me smile. So let's have a quick look. Loading. Please hold, caller. Wow. I mean, there's quite a lot here with 5 stars. Pretty much all of them, in fact. So that's nice to see. Thank you, everyone who's left one. I really appreciate that. Here we go. A tectonic mindset shift. What a gem of a podcast. I just listened to the episode with Clay Moffat. Had a complete mindset shift on trustworthiness. Excellent host with world-class guests to be found on this podcast. Well, thank you to host New Normal Big Life, whoever you are. Excellent conversations. Thank you for these insightful conversations. I really enjoyed learning more about EQ as a leader in an organization and boundaries. I am a coach. I work with both things in personal lives. So it's fun for me to listen in and learn how these things also amplify the work world. Thank you. Well, thank you, Susie, for that review as well. Much appreciated. And there's a review here from somebody called Lady Blackwood. The title is David is Great. Well, thank you. So are you. I recognize a few of these reviewer names as well as past guests. So thank you for that. You know who you are. More, please. So from Just Me 514. Really enjoy David's leadership conversations. They feel honest and practical. There's plenty I can take into my own work. Brings a grounded, approachable style that makes even big leadership topics feel relatable. Sometimes I wish he'd go a little deeper, but overall it's a podcast I keep going back to for inspiration. Well, that's nice to hear, particularly about the honest and practical, giving you something that you can take back to your own role, because that's the intention behind the podcast. So I always love having feedback like that. And I'd love to go deeper, but I do sometimes worry about episode length and it getting out of hand. But maybe we'll start doing that every month or so. We'll go a few more hours long. I don't know. We'll watch this space. So I have to have a think about that. Definitely recommend the Christmas and New Year specials, though, if you're after longer ones, because I think both of those last year ran over 3 hours. So, but yes, thank you for that review. Very kind. I will do one more and then we'll move on. So this one is from somebody called Happy Granddaughter. Raw leadership at its finest. David asks very poignant questions, dives deep into the struggles of daily leadership. I love that he's not talking about ideal leadership, but the realities of leading with integrity in a challenging world. And again, that's so nice to hear, such lovely feedback, because it really hits the nail on the head of what I'm trying to do with leading with integrity with this podcast. So thank you, whoever you are as well, Happy Granddaughter. And thank you to everyone who's submitted these reviews. Some of them are really very kind, lovely to read, and put a smile on my face. So keep them coming. Thank you very much, everyone. Where were we? Right. So back to the clips, the highlights from the last 4 years. We're now on season 3, 2023, the third year of the podcast. And I felt in a lot of ways at the time, this is where we started to really hit our stride, if you like. So this first clip was actually that first episode of the year with Chancellor Jackson, who at the time was running 2.5 businesses. Knowing him, it's probably a lot more by now. I have kept following him on Instagram, among other places since. I do love keeping track of all these lovely guests and finding out what they go on to do. Big and wonderful things, I'm sure. He was also, at the time of this episode, a recently published author. So he'd written a book about what happened when he went on a sports trip, I think it was, to Beijing, spent 14 days there, got caught doing something a bit silly, was arrested, and all of his experiences around that. But in this clip, one of the other things that he was doing at the time was coaching football, American football, that is, for any English in the audience. So we talk in this clip about the responsibility of a teacher and the role that they play in people's lives and what impact, what implications that has for leadership.
Don't be them coaches that I had that just shouldn't have been coaching, the teachers that shouldn't have been teaching, the individuals that shouldn't be in these positions. You're supposed to be here for the kids and put the kids first and make sure that you're doing right by them. If you in it for you, then you don't need to be in the field. It's a social service, you know what I'm saying? It's bigger than you. So you can't be selfish and try to work with other people. Nah, you need to try to find you a gig on the internet selling something so you ain't got to deal with nobody, you know what I'm saying, on that type of time. But yeah, man, don't be people that you experienced in your journey that you didn't enjoy.
Funny you should say that. I say it quite a lot, but nearly everyone I speak to, not just podcast guests, but nearly everyone I talk to, they've all got a story about that terrible manager. You know, the guy made them quit their job, or made them, break down crying at work, or have to leave because of stress, or whatever else. There's much more horrible examples, I'm sure. We'll talk about those.
Honestly, this person dictates your athletic career, has the control, has that control in their hand, depending on if you, not everybody can just up and transfer schools, or, you know what I'm saying, afford to go to all these trainings and work with all these trainers and go to all these camps so they can get exposure. Not everybody can do that. So it's like, only thing I got is, man, it's school. You know what I'm saying? And this coach, this program, this football program, and what I put forth into it. And you put your all into it. And your coach not even try to help you get to the next level. Yeah, it's definitely can't be what I experienced. Can't be that. Because it affects kids are impressionable. They nothing but sponges. And everything that they go through up until they're 18 years old is a piece of foundation that they're laying.
And very much the same could be said of leaders and leadership, I believe. This next clip was from one of my favourite all-time episodes. The guest was Catherine McCord. We've struck up quite a podcasting friendship over the years. I've been on her show a couple of times as well, and I always just love her take on things, her perspective, and the way she tells these stories. So, well, you'll see what I mean if you've not heard her episode, but it's episode 39. Highly recommend it. I believe Catherine also came back for a Christmas special or two, and until very recently had the perhaps dubious honour of holding the craziest HR story I've ever heard award. But sadly has recently been toppled. Tune in on Friday if you want to hear the HR story that finally toppled Catherine off the top of that podium.
So earlier in my career, very early on, is when I first kind of leadership positions, I was training. So I have several neurodiversities, including obsessive compulsive disorder. And I was training somebody with what he liked to call extra fun ADHD, meaning he was kind of far along the spectrum of ADHD. And I had come into a company that was opening up a new division. I was building it out for them, and I was allowed to kind of poach all the people that I liked best. So I took him from my husband's team. My husband worked for this company, superb manager. And he said, you're great, but you're not the right leader for him. And I was like, oh, I'm going to show you, I got all sassy about it, So I bring him over and I'm trying to train him. And I am just losing my mind. I'm pulling out every trick I know. I am failing miserably. I am frustrated and he's frustrated. And so I finally swallowed my pride and I walked into my husband, who had been training him and had been very successful. And I said, what is happening? Here's everything I've done. I said, I'm failing. What's going on? And he kind of laughs, just gently, just kind of to himself, and smiles and gets up and says, come with me. And he walks me in there and he looks at the guy and he says, okay, so where's this that we used? And he did that. He goes, are you doing this like we talked about it? He said, no, I didn't know if I was allowed to, blah, blah, blah. He said, okay. So he did that. And then he said, now what else do you need? And the guy told him. And so we set everything up that he needed. And my husband turned to me and he goes, did you ask him what he needed? And I was like, oh. because it had frustrated me, because we just had conflicting neurodiversities, right? I had just completely forgotten the most simple element was to create the psychological safety for him to tell me what he needed, because there were tools he was missing that he didn't know if he could ask about using. And I had forgotten just to ask him. Ask your people. That's the easiest part about inclusion. Just ask them. What do you need? What do you want? What's going on with you? And so, it's okay to fail. I failed there, but then we had success after that and things got great and it was good. So it's okay to have little failures. It's what you do to correct them. It's not about perfection.
Quite a powerful story about just the simplicity of asking what they need, isn't it? And so many managers just forget that question. One of the other big recurring themes on the podcast is this importance of context and individuals, and recognizing individual needs, differences, and then using that knowledge to make yourself a better leader. And that's a great example, I think, the story that Catherine just shared. This next clip was from a really interesting conversation I had with Justin Breen about visionary leadership, what it means, what it looks like, why it matters. And this is quite a short clip, but he was very good at getting to the point and explaining things very clearly and concisely. So see what you think of this one.
Most words, they start with a dictionary meaning. And so like entrepreneur, it's like you take something of lower value and create higher value with it. And with visionary, I look at it as, so most folks, business owners, consultants, humans, they care about revenue, office space, like material things. That's fine, by the way. That's most people. And then visionaries, they care about purpose, spending time with family and loved ones, and connecting the right folks, transformational. And so business owners, humans, consultants, that's 99% of the world, 99.9. They're trying to change their world there. And then a true visionary is trying to change the world. So it's a the versus there. So this is what leadership means to me. Okay. Very simple. If you are not a litmus test for the people you serve, then you are a hypocrite. So the purpose of my life is to be connecting superhero for every visionary who shares their stories with the world. So I am a litmus test for that. I am visionary sharing my story with the world. That is what leadership is to me, being a litmus test for the people that you serve.
Or put another way, leading by example.
Thank you.
That was a fun conversation. I enjoyed that one. And going straight into another one that I absolutely loved. It will be no surprise to any long-time listener because you'll know about my love of sci-fi and Star Trek in particular. So I was very pleased to have on the show Jeff Aiken, who at the time was hosting a podcast called the Starfleet Leadership Academy, where he examined episodes of Star Trek through the lens of leadership lessons. So we geeked out a lot in this one. And this is quite a long clip because I couldn't cut it. I was enjoying it too much. So we talked about the leaders from the original series of Star Trek in particular, and that triumvirate that I've spoken about a few times since. And this was kind of where I guess I originated that idea in terms of it being on podcasts. But it's been something that I've always admired about that original version of the show.
She was the top of the org chart. There were no admirals. There was no Starfleet command. There was no one to come and help. When she needed someone to come and help, she went and found that someone to help and enrolled them. She allied with the Borg, who were our mortal enemies, but found a way to come together. I think that she brings a lot of the qualities that Picard had, couples those without a leadership structure, but then also adds in some of the great stuff Sisko had. One of the things I loved about Sisko was when he would cook for his for the senior staff, like in his quarters. He'd cook for them and they'd share a meal. Pike does this also in Strange New Worlds, and it's just such a powerful statement of humility, really, to open your home to people, cook and serve them. There's a real allegory, real metaphor that occurs there, but it brings teams together. And I think Janeway really pulled a lot of those great pieces from them. And then, of course, she had that piece of Kirk where she's just like, I don't like what you're doing, and I'm going to fight you about it. We're going to fix this. But yeah, I think, Janeway to me is just, I really look up to her as a leader.
Yeah. Okay. I might be coming around to your point of view there. Yeah. I think for me, it's probably the new version of Pike. I agree. I think just from when he appeared in that other series.
Yeah. That one that shall no longer be pretty soon.
Yeah. Almost from the first moment, like he's coming in as a captain of a quite punch-drunk crew, shall we say. Uh-huh. And from the first conversations he has with each and every one of those people, he's immediately establishing that I'm a different kind of leader. I'm here to support you. And that's what I consider the kind of the modern approach to leadership. And he just does it and he gets it right. And even people who aren't that happy with the fact that he's there in the first place, within pretty short space of time, they're on board with it.
Yeah.
Because of how, he's just a really good leader. I think another one that would be high up my list is actually Spock.
Really?
Because I think there's a certain dignity and a massive skill in playing number two to such a massively famous character. Well, character in the sense of he's a fictional character, but also character in the sense of the massive personality that Kirk always was, right?
Yeah.
And Spock can do that, and yet he can still, you see it in the films perhaps more than the series, he still has this way of exerting his own leadership as well in each of those situations, and it's quite powerful to watch sometimes, I think.
It is. I always feel that in the original, one of the things I love about the original series is they have almost the perfect leader, but the perfect leader is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. It's the trio. And it really demonstrates that you don't have to lead alone. In fact, you're better when you don't. Just think about it from the diversity lens. He's got, this doctor from the South who's just, all charm and whatever, but is very pragmatic and just says things how they are. And then this cold, logical, much more emotional than he lets on to be, individual who just looks at things through that lens. And then Kirk, who's got the gravitas and the charisma, to go and lead it. One of my favorite book series is Frank Herbert's Dune. And Dune is actually about more than sandworms. Shocker for some people. The whole story arc is about the danger of charismatic leaders. And I feel that Captain Kirk, Spock, and Dr. McCoy are the great answer to that, where, we should be afraid of that person with the silver tongue who's saying things. But if they're surrounded by really good people giving counsel that they're listening to, then sometimes you need that charisma to deliver the message, to get people to do the hard things, but to know that it's backed, in a really good way. So I love that leadership trio that we get out of the original series crew.
The original series sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap, doesn't it? Because of perhaps the traditional gender roles and some of the womanizing that is perceived to happen, whether you agree with that or not. But for me, it was never about that. It was always about the relationship between those three characters of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also important as we watch older television, and this is just me on my soapbox for a minute, but it's important that we don't only watch older television, movies, music, plays, whatever. We don't only watch them through the lens of today. We're much smarter now. We're much more compassionate. We don't understand people still, but we understand them more. And it's like, I actually had someone, that quote from Balance of Terror about not having room for bigotry on the bridge. Someone got really upset with me once, and they're like, well, there's no room for bigotry in his quarters either. There's no room for bigotry, period. And I'm like, yeah, I agree 100%. But again, in 1967, they weren't there yet. We had to say no room on the bridge before we could say no room at all. And so I think that one of the original series' biggest flaws, like you said, is the way that they portrayed women. But also one of its greatest strengths was how they portrayed women, by putting them in quasi leadership positions. They did put Uhura in charge of the Enterprise in the animated series. When it went to cartoons, they gave her the shot, but that wasn't happening on TV at all at the time. And it's important that we remember that and then look at the track record since. Did they get better? And during the Rick Berman era of Star Trek in the 90s, honestly, women were still portrayed pretty terribly through today's lens, but a little better than they were in the original series. Take that to today, and we have, women captains who are kicking butt. Women are portrayed in what we can look at through today's lens as a really, really great way. I wonder what we'll look at it, though, in 30, 40 years from now, how we'll look at how either women or different people were treated in what is now modern Trek. We're always on that journey.
Yes, I do worry sometimes what the future bigotry will be, because there's been a new one for each generation, hasn't there? And I wonder what we're going to get in trouble for in 30 years.
We're really good at finding that new thing.
I hope that thing in 30 years' time will have nothing to do with podcasting, because I'll be in serious trouble if it is. Anyway, next clip was a guest called Olivia Gamblin, and she is an AI ethicist. And it was really fascinating digging into the kind of the duality, the problems, and the opportunities with AI, but also like how best to use it ethically. Olivia also had a fair bit of experience running teams and as a leader as well. So this clip is actually her talking about leadership lessons that she'd learned from her career. And I believe since we had this conversation, in fact, this year potentially, she's recently published a book as well. So maybe go and look her up and get a copy of that.
Understanding that it is okay to show weakness as a leader and ask for help from people, not only within my network, but also from my team, to be able to say to my team, look, I am having a hard week, or I don't know what to do in this situation. I'm trying to figure it out. Being able to show weakness is a lot. It's a bigger strength than I realized. There was a long time that I spent focused on, I have to always be strong. I have to always have the answer in this scenario. And all it did was just trap me in my own box and fear constantly of, I need to know all the answers and I need to know everything. And this pressure that I was putting on myself. But when I learn, and I still haven't fully learned the lesson, I always default back towards, I need to be strong. But how I've learned to actually have moments of that vulnerability and show the weakness, I'm always surprised about what comes back. I'm always surprised about the support that comes from my team, or the creativity that comes from my team, or within my network, the encouragement and advice and support that comes from being able to say, look, I'm struggling right now and I do need help. That's been the hardest lesson for me to learn, hands down.
Yeah, I can certainly empathise with that one. I think it's a sign of the changing times to an extent as well, isn't it? Because I'm not sure about you, but certainly when I started my career, any sign of weakness was a cause for loss of respect.
Yeah.
Not just as a leader, just generally in the workplace.
Yeah.
That has changed now. It's the opposite now. If you're not willing to be a little bit vulnerable and authentic, is the buzzword, isn't it? And be more honest about yourself, your life outside work as well, and how you're feeling about something, if you're stressed, if you're having a bad week, all that kind of thing. Actually, it builds trust, it builds respect. People feel trusted as well because you're sharing something with them. And I think it's the expectation now, almost.
Exactly.
Such an important lesson there. And again, a recurring theme on, for leadership, really, every conversation I have, not just on the podcast. But that sort of myth about leaders needing to know the answers and be confident, all these other actually quite damaging and harmful ideas, it's that simple concept of vulnerability sometimes that can really just save you from some of those worst impacts. This next guest is probably one of the ones that I get comments about most often from people who've listened to the show. And this was the episode where I felt like things had really started to take off in terms of those vanity metrics of listens and plays and views and clicks. But it's Mr. JJ Brune, the retired spy, who had some brilliant stories from his career in the intelligence world, some quite scary situations, not to mention some great leadership insights and lessons about human behavior and how to get the most from people, how to understand people better.
A lot of members within the intelligence community, we don't necessarily miss the job per se. We miss the gang. We miss the interaction. I have these deployments, but you know what? I have more fun, more memorable events during the training, because we're acluistic, one without a clue. Like, I've never interrogated. It's not something that I go through in high school or university to learn. It's like, no, and you're really not good at it at the front. When we first had to train to do a harsh interrogation, they put a paper silhouette of a person in front of you, and you have to yell at that person for 9 minutes nonstop. What am I going to talk about in 9 minutes? Like, you got to be really creative. I was done in 15 seconds because all of my English swear words, I've used them all. And then, so at the end, you know what? I'd start interrogating in French. And when I did have a live event with a live instructor, because this is where you're going to be evaluated, And I went in and I was using the different approaches, the friendly approach, the mother approach, the lawyer, not the lawyer approach, but the leader approach, the harsh, anything. You need to be able to switch and change. And I was sure that I was failing. Like, it was not going well at all. Like, because everything that I was trying, he was not biting in. And I said, well, heck with this then. I'm just going to go French. And I went French on him, up, down, left, right. And I just went and I called him everything that I could call him, and just that saved my bacon. Because as soon as I switched, I got into his brain. He did not know where I was going. He just knew I was real. And then I was in, as in, because that's what you're looking to go, is to go inside the person's brain and start questioning and because they don't know what to do next. And that was an aha moment in regards to, oh. So a lot of the character building moments, the failures, if you wish, during your training.
Quite a powerful clip that covers things like the teamwork aspect and what makes a team memorable, as well as the power of failure and the lessons you can learn from it. So yeah, great conversation. Really enjoyed that one. So before we move on to season 4, which was 2024 or last year at time of recording anyway, I read out some reviews earlier, and I would just like to also mention it's not just listeners with nice things to say. I've also been very lucky to get nearly 70 5-star reviews now on Podmatch from guests who've had a great experience being on the show. So again, I mean, here's a couple of examples that made me chuckle. I mean, there's one here. This episode's not even released yet, but it was Pascal Mboa. This review did make me laugh. Having this conversation with David at 6 a.m. was such a great way to start the day. He's a kind, intentional host with a real passion for his audience, asking thoughtful questions that bring out the best insights for his listeners. We had an incredible exchange of knowledge and ideas, and most importantly, we shared practical steps to help people better understand their wiring and reconnect with their natural power. And it was a great conversation, actually. I really did enjoy it. That review made me laugh because that first sentence, you could take it sarcastically, but actually it really wasn't. And when you hear that episode later this year, I think you'll get it. You'll understand. Oh, here's one from Gary Chan, whose episode was out just 2 days ago, The Mentalist, the Security Mentalist. David is a fantastic podcast host. Came well prepared, adapted his questions dynamically based on my responses. His passion for leadership is evident, making the conversation highly engaging because he not only asked thoughtful questions, but also shared valuable insights of his own. Well, thank you for noticing, Gary. The feeling's mutual. It was a really great conversation. And I still haven't quite got over that card trick that you played on me at the end of the episode either. All right, moving on then. Season 4. We will start season 4 with an extract from a conversation I had with Jimmy Okabanjo, and this was about leadership, workplace trauma. We talked about diversity, equity, inclusion, discrimination a little bit as well. And it was a really important and meaningful conversation. But we also bonded over our mutual love of Star Trek. And I'm afraid that's what this clip is about. But definitely you need to go and listen to that whole episode. Jimmy was such a great guest. She was very open about some really difficult experiences, actually. And there are lessons in there for people who may be experiencing discrimination, but also leaders, bosses, managers about how not to handle things and what you should be doing instead. So it's episode 93. Do go and give it a listen. And in the meantime, here's a nice little spoiler for you.
Even like in the future, it's over-indexed with humans.
Mm.
It's not the most of us. You go to all the aliens that sit on all the judges. You may have one person that isn't human, but the rest are all human, and largely, European humans, but still a lot of humans, a lot of humanoids. So very few gaseous races that are represented in the Federation. So it's very, it's a very human-centric organization, professing to be, no, we're very inclusive, but they're actually not.
Yeah, that is true. And I mean, the irony there again is that Star Trek as a TV series has been various decades fairly groundbreaking in terms of
It has been.
diversity and representation. But then, yeah, you're right. I mean, the way they portray it is. I mean, I suppose it's catering to the audience to a large extent, isn't it? I don't know if there's any aliens watching Star Trek. There might be.
I like
Who would
but
know?
I like Star Trek, but it comes down to it's my favorite of all science fiction properties. But it's something. So I like it when aliens call them on that, because sometimes they will be called on the fact that they profess this, but they're not. And it's good to see them wrestling with their own issues, because Star Trek tries to tell a story. And the more they can be self-aware of the fact that, I mean, granted, we know the reason why they're humanoids is budget. It's a financial, it's a financial issue. We understand that. So, maybe in 50 years, when technology is even better and cheaper, we'll see a lot more different shapes.
Yeah.
Also, as human beings, we like to see humans or humanoid type creatures. It might be hard if the entire bridge is ooze with bubbles. I understand, but it's also a great space to talk about, to bring that into conversation about the fact that the Federation, over half their vessels are human, but humans are not the only ones in the entire race. 1,000 years in the future, and Discovery goes to the future, the president of the Federation, the head, is still a human. Like 1,000 years, you still haven't got a non-human, but the leader of Starfleet is human, but the president of the Federation is Bajoran Cardassian. So we've got some diversity going on there. So I just feel it's a great space to have that conversation, and it's good in terms of, I'm not saying this to knock it, because I actually like the show. There'll probably be episodes where they're called on this, because it's a chance for Star Trek, again, to comment on these society issues in a way that they uniquely can, by putting the camera against them on themselves. It's like the enslavement of Starfleet's ongoing enslavement of artificial intelligence. Like it's like the whole data thing happened, the whole Doctor happened, and they're still enslaving images and enslaving holograms after Voyager. Like we saw all the Doctor episodes.
Yeah.
And it's like they're not even, and it's not being discussed like it's a prejudice the Federation has. That there's,
because it's such an interesting one as well, particularly with the holograms, because I mean that came across in quite a few of the series. There was the whole storyline in DS9 about it as well, and it does make me wonder, like, if humanity today encountered an emerging intelligent form of life, how would we deal with it? What would we do? And I mean, this is the power of sci-fi, isn't it? That's why I love it.
So my theory is we'd enslave it, exploit it for resources, or eat it. That's pretty much it. That's the human thing. Can it produce something for us? We can make it go work, or we use it as itself. Can we use it as itself to build something for us? And can we like truffle
and inevitably we'd probably fight a war over it at some point as well.
Definitely.
Okay, so I've got to ask you then, given you have an engineering background and you're a Star Trek fan, who is your favorite Star Trek engineer?
Oh, that's I love them all. So it would be, I have my top three. I'd say Roxanne Dord, B'Elanna Torres, absolutely, hands down. I just like that she was able to keep that ship running when there was nothing. Just like, sticks and stones, like, and not even her ship, right? So B'Elanna Torres, Geordi LaForge. Geordi was just great. Again, flagship captain. Went from helmsman to engineering leader. And then Billups from Lower Decks. Billups he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun.
He is good fun. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, interesting. I like that you've already got in your mind immediately the top three as well. You didn't have to think about it very much. Yeah. And now I'm kind of sad that Lower Decks is over again. I still haven't watched the last ever episode of it. I've been kind of holding it because if I don't watch that last episode, then the show isn't over in my mind. I know that's a bit mad, but anyway. So completely changing topic. This next extract is, again, it was one of my genuine favorite conversations with Afghanistan and Special Forces veteran William Yeski. The whole episode was, I guess, a summary of his book, but his experiences over there as well. His thoughts on leadership, his lessons from those quite extreme environments about what real leadership looked like. And then this clip, he talks quite a lot about the people and the team as well. It was such a good conversation, this. Again, and I've read his book as well, and it is really, really good. So I highly recommend both of those.
So the biggest leadership lesson is, I mean, you can't do it on your own. I mean, with anything, with any working team like we had over there, but I mean, translating even to creating a project like this book, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do that without them. The publisher came out and was like, you know, in the initial talks and everything, they're like, hey, can you supply us with 30 good high res pictures? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Not a problem. And what they didn't know is, like, at the time I had, you know, 5 grainy Facebook pictures and was like, all right, how am I going to do this? And that's really how it all, you know, started coming down, is they put the accountability on me once they started showing up and once they started bringing stuff forward. Like, you know, all of that stuff that you see on social from the last year, that was all them, like, bringing it out and saying, hey, like, this is what I have, you know, if it will help and it'll help bring the story forward, like, do it. Or the guys that I had to sit down and interview. There was a bunch of them to where I would not be able to get that picture. And I know for a lot of them, that's a tough thing for them to do, is sit down and open these traumas back up. And quite honestly, though, for all of us, it ended up being good for a lot of people. You know, not just me, in the way of slowing down enough to kind of really process some of this. I kind of noticed afterwards that, you know, in writing some of this, there was some chapters where tears are just streaming, to where I'm like, where is this coming from? Because I've always been able to talk about it, but it was really slowing things down enough to really, I guess, come to terms with everything that had happened over there. And it was like, man, you know, we share these burdens together, though. And, you know, in doing so and in moving forward together and whatnot, I don't know, it's just been a really good experience, you know, and seeing them, you know, at the launch event, you know, down at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum. That was, man, if there was anything that I wanted to make sure of, it was not to screw up that event. Yeah, it was all about trying to make it special for them. But, like, again, we work off of each other, like having them there and seeing them there and, like, hey, that they support you and that they're behind you after all this time. And, like, really, some of them have memories that are contrary to what's in the book. You know, and that's not a dig on anybody or anything either. It's more of a perception. And then also realizing that in these instances of high stress, is a lot of people don't realize that, you know, as a human being and stuff, we're designed to work together. We literally, in these type of situations, sync up. It's weird, you know, but I mean, that's part of what pushes you together in these high moments of stress, and why, really, quite honestly, you can call any one of those guys. You know, I can call them up and they're there, and it's almost like you guys never left each other. You know, you're still, you still have that same rapport, and they're still just willing, you know, to open up about certain things. Or if you have an ask, you know, they're willing to do what they can in that instance. It's pretty amazing.
And then moving into the next clip, this is from episode 105, which fell within the International Leadership Week series that I did last year. So episode 105 was with a former school superintendent and educational leader, Ray Lauk. He was also a comedian, did a stand-up comedian course. And there's a whole series of stories that he shared. This particular extract is about what it was like coming out late in his career, having been a closeted gay man in education for most of the 80s and 90s. But yeah, really powerful story, really very memorable episode, hence making it into this very episode as well.
And that's one of the interesting things that I'm learning about in my research, because I've got some superintendents who were administrators, or at least they were well into their careers in the 80s during the AIDS epidemic. And one of the people that I interviewed was fired just for being seen in a gay neighborhood. And of course, we've come a long ways from that. And not to get too far off the question, but I do remember my first principalship. I was hired on whatever day of the week it was, and the superintendent said, "Tonight you're going to come to the board meeting." And there were the other principals. We didn't know what we were doing in the closed session, which was private from the public meeting. And this was in 1993. And the superintendent was shared with the board that we had one or more children in the school district with AIDS, not HIV positive, but with full-blown AIDS. And because of the confidentiality, no one could know who they were, which school they were in, which classroom they were in. So you can imagine at that time, again, still early 90s, there's this fear legitimately about AIDS and how it's getting transmitted and what can we do and how are we going to catch it and all that stuff. And you could have been a teacher with one of those children in your class and not know about it. But that was fine, because what we learned was it didn't matter, because you're not going to catch it in a school. We had all the training on universal practices, which was basically, if there's a body fluid, don't touch it. Well, guess what? We never would touch it anyway. I mean, we've been teachers, elementary teachers.
Why would you? Yeah.
with all sorts of body fluids. And the younger the kids are, the more the body fluids there are in a classroom. Yeah, sure, and we didn't need to be told, don't touch it. We weren't touching it anyway. But, over time, we kind of got over that fear. And so there were those superintendents that came up through that period. And then I'm seeing other groups of superintendents who some will say, I'm a superintendent, period. Who I sleep with, what my personal life is irrelevant to my job. Then there are other superintendents who say, nonsense. I am a gay superintendent and I am an advocate for my LGBTQ students. And that's very much their sexual identity is very much tied to their professional identity as well. So,
which side of that debate would you fall on, do you think, if you were to do it again?
Yeah, good question. I would probably have been the advocate. And when I came out, so I came out in 2010. First, I came out to my family. And then the next question was, do I come out at work too? Because superintendency is a very political position. You start making decisions, and there's always somebody on the short end of the stick on any decision you make, someone who's disagreeing with it. And so I first came out to my board, and I had a wonderful board president. She was a retired first grade teacher, just a lovely person, very supportive. She understood the role of the Board of Education, which is governance, and it's not running the schools. It's making sure that the schools are well run by the superintendent. But I called her up and I said, Lynn, I've got something to share with you. Do you mind coming in to the office when you've got a minute? So she did. And I told her, and I sat her down. I said, Lynn, just want you to know that I'm gay, and I came out to my family just over the holidays. And she said, oh, thank God. I said, well, it's an interesting response. What's that about? She said, I thought you were going to quit. so the gay thing is really nothing.
There's not much else I can say after that clip other than thank you again, Ray, if you're listening, for sharing those stories with us. I really enjoyed hearing this next clip. Of all the episodes I've done so far, he may laugh if he hears me say this, but this was the one genuinely I was most nervous about beforehand. It was episode 109. The guest was Drew Dudley. He's been on a couple of times now because he came back for the Christmas and the New Year episodes at the end of last year. And I think we started to form a nice little friendship. You know, it's been great getting to know him, but I knew about him before the episode. It's one of the things that launched his current speaking career was a TED talk he gave, which blew up on YouTube back in, I think it was 2010, 11, 12, something like that. And I'd seen it at the time whilst I was in a leadership position, whilst I wasn't having a great time at work. And his whole approach to leadership back then just really spoke to me. So having known about him beforehand, I reached out to him deliberately to just as an off chance, not expecting a response. And someone from his team did reply. He did agree to come on the show, and it was one of the best conversations that I've had in my life, I think, to be fair. But it was that old maxim about don't meet your heroes. You know, I ask every guest at the end of every episode, who would be your leadership hero? Drew would definitely have been on my list before I met him, and doubly so now that I have met him. So this is a short extract. This isn't the bit where we talk about everyday leadership so much, because I wanted to pick a different clip because I feel like I've overused that other one. But definitely go and listen to this episode. Catch last year's Christmas and New Year's episodes as well, because he's just one of those speakers that is thoroughly enjoyable to listen to. So it's easy to see why he is so great at what he does and why he's having every success. And I wish him every greater success as well.
Like when I go and speak to high school students or college students, I'm trying to put myself out of business so that I don't have to talk about this with adults, right? If we can get them when they're young, I'm out of business because by the time they get into the corporate world, there's no need to talk about this stuff anymore. But it'll be a while before I can put myself out of business.
Well, I mean, that's one of the tests of leadership, isn't it? Making yourself redundant.
That would be the hope. As I said to you, I just lost a leader in my organization who I'm only this week realizing he left on Friday, was an essential part of what, like I knew he was an essential part, but you don't truly realize the hole that someone can leave until they go. And I also think that it's important to let them know that. It in the afterwards sort of be like, I knew how what you did mattered and impacted my life and our organization, but it's once you were gone that the following insights emerged. And I think they have the right to know that. I think that'll empower them for their next job. And I think if you can, like I said, not try to create great jobs, but try to empower people to become the type of people who are great at jobs, I think that's extraordinary leadership.
Yeah, and if you do the second one, then almost by default, you're going to do the first anyway, I suspect.
So many of the things we're taught are goals in leadership: money, power, influence, prestige. They're not goals. They're the natural byproducts that come from living your values and leading with integrity. So many of the goals we're taught to chase are not goals. They are byproducts of daily behavior. And if we can focus on the daily behavior, then people get to the byproducts.
Loved that. Drew also, I should say, launched his own podcast at the beginning of this year. So go and find that and give it a listen too. It's really good. And speaking of people who have their own podcasts, I couldn't do a highlights of the Leading with Integrity show episode without featuring these next two, this husband and wife team. They are Alan and Emily Braithwaite of the famous Yellow Tuxedo and the Digital Circus. I'm fortunate enough that I have fairly regular conversations with these two. I've actually joined their online membership, and I always leave a conversation with one or both of these two people with a smile on my face. So I couldn't not include a clip from their episode, really. Episode 111, Small Business Leadership, Life as a Funpreneur. As a married couple where you don't have any other income, start a business together. Have you ever regretted it?
No.
Was it difficult at the beginning, or?
It's never.
I'll let you answer, Emily.
No, Alan and I have this question a lot, actually, and people go, "Oh, I could never work with my other half, could never do it," and we the same answer comes out, and if you get asked on a podcast, it's the same answer. The answer is no. We've never regretted it. Love the adventure together. I would love, I'm working with my best friend. It's brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic. We have this ability to know that we've got very different skill sets. We've got very different experiences. We have different career paths from before we worked together, but we have commonality in the fact that we are working towards the same goal. So that is a strength that a lot of people don't get. And my family background is that I grew up in a family business. So my grandfather had a chain of, or many businesses. He was a serial entrepreneur. So it's no surprise that I'm now in that kind of realm as well. But he started a chain of nursery goods shops. So buggies, pushchairs, that kind of stuff. And we had 4 shops between the family. And my mum and dad had one. My uncle had one. That kind of stuff. So I've always been around family business and seeing out that dynamic. And it's been an interesting learning curve. Now, fast forward a few years, when we started Bailey Bell Tents, we also did have family members working with us outside of us two. Never again. Never again would we work that closely to family and friends in that kind
of... The motivation is
very, very different. And so I'll use my dad as an example, but this is not a diss on my dad, but my dad is like, well, what is this to make? We need to graft and we need to do this, because that's traditional values of how you work. Whereas Alan and myself are a bit, let's work smarter, not harder sometimes. Let's work at structure. Let's look at different models of business and look at online. Let's look at global. And we're using those quite different words to what was in the 1980s, let's just stay in your lane, do this. So the fact that Alan and I, we recognize the nuances of family business, and I've come into that in a relationship knowing some of those lessons as well from what my mum and dad would have had. We are both very ambitious. We are both very driven. We're both very gregarious. We are both very, we don't suffer fools, and we have a very clear vision of where we're trying to get to. And it's quite an exciting place to be there, where Alan could have the stupidest idea in the world, but it's not stupid. And I will sit back with a cup of tea and go, okay, lay it on me right now.
Normally you belittle me on Instagram stories about my ideas at 6 a.m.
I draw the line when I'm coming down at 6 a.m. in my dressing gown, and
I'm an early riser.
And he's literally go, right, go. And I'm like, oh, just let me pour my morning coffee first, darling. So,
and I will then reply, well, we don't win the day by doing that, darling. Let's go.
But I do think coming back, it's having those different skill sets, which is really, and not just in terms of practical skill sets, but in personality skill sets as well.
Again, every time I revisit or hear or have a conversation with these two, I always come away with something useful, tangible. Such a great reminder there of valuing yourself and your skill sets and knowing your own strengths and playing to those. So the last clip that I will share from last year, from season 4, if you like, of the podcast, was my conversation with Sabine Gideon. And this was, again, we talked about so many different concepts of leadership, like confidence, influence, how to have impact, how to elevate the way that you were leading. And actually, towards the end of the conversation, Sabine had almost started to become my coach as well. So it was good. It was enjoyable. It was educational. And I've picked a clip, not quite at random, but it was a good clip, I think, to summarize some of the insights of the conversation.
If you have a sponsor, that you have a sponsor, because you need someone advocating for you in those rooms that you're not. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you have someone, I like to call them the super connector. And so the super connector is that person in the organization, or it could be outside of the organization, but they know everything. They know where the dead bodies are. Like, they know how to work around people's calendars. They know schedules, right? So you want to have a super connector in your corner because, let's just say you have a project that's being delayed, or you need to have a meeting with a leader, right? You trying to get through spending time doing all of that on your own, it's probably going to take more time than necessary. You can pick up the phone. You can send an email, build that relationship to help streamline that and make it easier for you to get done what you need to do. And then the last thing that I would say is, don't assume that everyone on your team needs the same thing from you, right? Again, this is an identity shift. And every single person on your team, whether you're managing 1 people or 50 people, hopefully you're not a brand new manager managing 50 people. But everyone is an individual, and having that mindset and an understanding doesn't mean that you have to contort yourself to support everyone, but you need to understand that John works like this. He's motivated by this. These are his drives. These are his needs. Susie is motivated by this. And to the extent that you can, if you can't support them, being able to direct them to the resources that they need.
And that's a great point, I think, to end on that series. One of the lessons I've learned the most since I've gone into business by myself, and it's something I wish I'd picked up way earlier in my career, because it probably would have been really helpful if I had, is how important it is to build a network. And that can be within your organization, within your job, if you don't fancy doing it outside, or it can be like going out, meeting new people. Even if you're not in a sales role, it is important to have a wider group of people you can go to for advice, for support, etc. So we only have one season left, and that's this year's season, in fact. I'm not going to choose loads of long clips from this one because hopefully it's more recent in everyone's memory. But there are a few of my favorites from this year that I did want to revisit quickly. So I'll just pop these clips in back to back. I won't give any commentary on them because, as I say, they're fairly recent. They're from this year. But in order, they are Jim Bouchard, the leadership sensei, Jody Newman, innovator extraordinaire, Alex Sanfilippo, podcasting advocate and founder of podmatch.com, Emma Gabor, the non-profit leader and historian. We had a great conversation about witchcraft, among other things. Dan Moore, the branding expert and graphic designer. In fact, the very man responsible for the excellent Leading with Integrity rebrand, all the new artwork and logos and visual identity that you've been seeing this year. We did that project. We started it this time last year, I think. And I couldn't be happier with the results. And it was great to get him on the podcast as well. Then we've also got a clip from Vinny Potestivo, the marketing and online visibility expert to the stars. Then the wonderful Lindsay Burden, coach, optimist, and generator of boundless enthusiasm. And then finally, Mr. Michael Dillard, leadership and burnout expert and former US diplomat. And I will going to stop after that in terms of, well, most of the clips, but certainly for this year, for fear of just copying in every single episode I've ever recorded. Otherwise, I did say at the beginning I struggled with this one, but hopefully it's been a useful set of clips to revisit so far. But it certainly has been tough to condense down and pick favorite moments. It's like trying to pick a favorite child, I guess. Yeah, almost impossible, hopefully.
There's a lot of confusion. All these philosophical debates have to start with some sort of clarity of the words we're using, right? We have to define our terms, get our semantics clear. I believe strongly there's a lot of confusion between the words manager and leader, right? Mm-hmm. Management and leadership. Admiral Grace Hopper said it so well quite a few years ago. She said, management is about things, leadership is about people. I don't know that anybody's ever said it better than that. Now, both are important, right? You've got to take care of business too. But think about what your business is. Your business is the people, right? If you're not taking care of your people, you're not taking care of your business. And if you're not taking care of your people, they won't take care of your business, right? That's proven over and over and over again. As of this year, we've reached the highest levels of disengagement in the workplace. Quiet quitting, what do they call it now? Revenge quitting. People that are sitting there purposely not doing anything, right? Because they're dissatisfied, and usually with their leadership, with the leadership direction, the way that they're being led or not. So that's really important. Now, at the same time, if we look at it that way, leadership has nothing to do with rank or title or position. You are a leader, whether you want to be or not, whether you think you are or not.
Regardless of whether I wanted to stay on the path I was on, and I could have probably happily stayed doing what I was doing pre-financial crash of sort of 2008-9 for the next couple of decades, quite happily, the market thought differently. My client, my sales pipeline, because I was doing ID generation, I was paid out of either a marketing budget, biz dev budget, or R&D. They were the first buckets of cash to shut. And so my clients, we still want to use you, but we cannot pay you. So, and without the flexibility to go, oh, okay, now I'm here. I didn't design to be here. Let's face it, I don't want to be here, but I'm here nonetheless. So there are always choices and there are always options. And it's having the flexibility to go, okay, so what do I keep hold of? And what do I change? And if you have that options thinking, so if you have the flexibility to think divergently, like, here's a challenge, let me think of 20, 30, 100 ways I could solve this, and then make a decision about which idea is going to serve me and my business best. If you can do that and have that flexibility of thinking, you can navigate your way through. If you've got the one idea and you're clinging to it like a life raft, and that life raft is deflating before your eyes, there's only one way you're going to go, and that's down, submerged.
I wasn't doing more work, I was doing less, but I was pouring more into equipping others that were working directly under me and teaching them to do the same. And that's ultimately the only reason I got into the C-suite, is because I learned to do that, and it was from him. Before that, I had really plateaued for quite a few years. I was stuck at that senior director position because I wanted to be seen, but that didn't matter anymore. What needed to happen is me equipping others. So to me, that was the best experience I've ever had being led. It was someone teaching me to lead leaders. And that will forever stick with me, is how I want to equip others as well, in anything, in podcasting even.
I think it speaks a lot as well to like the prevailing corporate culture, doesn't it? I'm sure it's true in the States. It's certainly true here. But what we measure leaders on, what does leadership performance look like? And I think the fact that you were so surprised that someone, in my opinion, got it right, that says a lot.
Sure does.
You described it as a crazy idea, so I really want to go into that a little bit more. I wouldn't say crazy is the word I would use, but I certainly think it's unusual for final year students to decide, I'm going to go and start an organization by myself and found a thing. Most people are focused on like dissertations and exams and things like that at that point. So tell us a bit more about that. Like, where did the idea come from? What were some of the challenges and lessons that you got from that experience?
Actually, the idea was very funny. It just popped into my head one day to the next. I was in not a very fun period in my life. And I think subconsciously I was looking for like a creative way out, a way that I could entertain myself and maybe, escape my reality, to put it very bluntly. And so, I just kind of went for it. It was it was just a very simple decision. I thought of it. I thought it was a great time. It was also COVID, so we're on lockdown. And so I was like, well, actually, how about a community? Let's build a community. People need it. So it was pretty straightforward, really. Now, what I've learned, my goodness, lots of things, lots of important lessons. I think one of the most important ones is I went into it thinking, it'll be fun. It'll be cute. It'll be easy. Yeah, no. I think entrepreneurship, or just founding your own thing, is actually really hard. And the initial stages are always, the first few months is always really fun because it's a baby stage, right? You're just enjoying yourself, you're brainstorming, but then things get serious and the challenges are appearing suddenly out of nowhere. And I think that's where it really begins.
We're solopreneurs. Like, a lot of people would look at that and be like, well, why do you need leadership skills? So what do you think? What's your answer to that? Are they relevant? And if so, why?
God, yes, they're relevant. Because I'll let anyone who's thinking about going solopreneur or doing anything like this into a really big secret. Clients don't know what the fuck they want. This is one of the big major things I've learned is that generally speaking, the reason they're coming to you is because you are an expert. Therefore, they don't know what they want. They have an idea of the results they want. That's what they have. But they don't know what it is you want. And so it's important to be able to have leadership skills because you often need to lead your clients to the answer before you can even get started on their work. This is what the whole briefing stage is all about. If you sit and get told what you're going to do by your clients, often it's not going to have the results that they want. And that is going to leave them annoyed. And you can do a great job for them. You can do exactly what they want you to, but it won't do what they expect it to. And so they'll immediately go, well, this is obviously down to the freelancer, the solopreneur, the business owner I used because they haven't done what I wanted them to. So your job is to be able to lead them and help them come to an understanding of what's going to help their business most. I've done myself out of sales doing this because sometimes people come to me and go, I think I need a rebrand. And I look at it and go, no, actually, you need something different. Because it's more important that they succeed than it is that I get money in my pocket, as far as I'm concerned.
Discovery starts when you find yourself, and how you find you matters. Not just where you are and what you're doing and who you're doing it with and what you're saying and the words that you're surrounded with and the energy that you're surrounded with. But how you find yourself matters. Sometimes there's like an external event that needs to happen for you to find yourself, that could be, I was brought up Baptist. That could be biblical. If it's biblical, you better be careful because if you don't know the answers and you don't know, how to, if you're looking out to find yourself when you're on the inside and you're looking externally for answers and it becomes biblical, those solutions usually are walk west, build an ark, or to be honest, I don't know, isn't the ultimate healing isn't good. Ultimate healing looks like 6 feet under the ground. So I don't want to be ultimately healed, please. I need to come up with some answers on my own. And then I need to just step day by day with integrity into what I want those footsteps to look like, what I want those foot tracks to look like, where I want that destination to be. And how I get to places is so much more important than where I'm going. Leadership is something that lives in the future. And the more prepared I am for a conversation today, the more of a leader I look like. And what I mean by that is that leaders have town halls, leaders have meetings in the future that are locked in so that that there's going to be a conscious conversation to support this energy and action that's happening right now. So I think that it's really important to have events in the future. And it's sort of like, I come from an industry of what's next, on television and in media, yeah, congratulations, you're the lead in this film. So what's next? And you're like, what's next is I'm the lead in this film now. So but that's what people always want to know. So next, leadership is answering that next. And then I think leadership is also, it's people skills. If you're spending a lot of money hiring new talent and retaining talent and keeping your audience and keeping your employees, then you should probably take a look at your leadership skills.
Because I think there's lots of people out there who would love to start a business, who aren't yet ready or aren't yet brave enough or haven't yet found the courage. They love the opportunity to get to do the stuff that the rest of us are doing all the time, the networking and the marketing and all those things. And a reframe is so important. It works really well, but what if it fails? But what if it doesn't? What if I don't make any sales? But what if you do? And I've had that with clients before, and they were like, well, I haven't made any sales yet. Yet. That's the word, yet. When's the can't close? Which is a phrase I don't like either, but, we use it for now. When's the can't close? Oh, in 2 weeks. You've got 2 weeks. You get to promote this for 2 weeks. I think we're really good. Just the human nature. Oh, it's not working. And I've heard that before. Oh, it's not working. How long have you been doing it? A couple of weeks now. Yeah, that's not long enough to decide that it's not working. So there is so many things that we can reframe. And I totally agree with Alan. He's absolutely right. When we just take a moment, so it's when those negative thoughts, and actually this is one of the ways that you can strengthen that resilience muscle that you were talking about. So when that negative thought comes up, I can't do this. Yeah, but I get to start doing it. I could at least have a go at it. The minute you start discussing something, even when I say discussing, this is obviously you having a conversation in your head, which works fine, by the way, everyone. You just have to just switch it just slightly. We don't even have to, go too far with it. Sometimes it's just the change of a word. But when we can do that, that's what starts to build that resilience muscle. Oh, it didn't work, so I'm not going to do it again. Oh, it didn't work. I'm a failure. Okay, be curious. Okay, it didn't work this time. What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this? The reframe is just magic. And it's where I believe, and I expect Alan would agree, it's where the golden nuggets are. Because if you can start switching it, you go, oh yeah, so yeah, I get to do my marketing. So what kind of marketing do I want to do? Suddenly everything feels different. And when we shift that energy, whether life, business, leadership, just shift it. I get to lead people. Where do I want to lead them to? I get to do this. How do I want to bring these people with me? How do I want to encourage and inspire this next generation of leader? And you can use it in anything. I'm all over that. Alan is a genius. Let's not tell him I said that.
Yeah, he probably won't listen to this. Probably.
I bet he does. You know he will.
Yeah, it's not like he's the most frequent liker and commenter on this podcast or anything. It's almost certain that he won't see it. I might make a clip out of that bit just to make sure he really does see it.
Absolutely. Come on, Alan. Come and listen.
I had an opportunity to go and be a store manager in the mall. But my wife said, Michael, something better and greater is in store for your life. Guess what? I went to the interview anyway. While I'm in there interviewing, my wife is walking around the mall praying that I don't get the job. What type of spouse does that? The next morning, I'm excited. I check my email waiting for the job offer. But instead, I see an email that says, interview Washington, D.C. for a financial controller job. I click on it. It says, you have to have a top secret security clearance. I said, what kind of job is this? You have to pass a medical background for you and your family. I said, whoa, this is getting scary, David. And then it says you have to travel the world. So I go and Google financial controller, USAID. And it says that when you're traveling around the world, you will represent U.S. citizens with a diplomatic passport.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed all of those clips and, of course, all of the episodes this year and in the years beforehand. One final thing I'd like to do, it's a bit of foreshadowing for episode 200. I'm selling my own mentoring service and a community where I offer mentoring. I regularly talk about the power of community, about mentorship, having a coach, having that impartial third party, that someone who's outside of the situation to talk to. So I think it's a good idea to give you some examples of mentors that I've had over the years. Now, all three of these I'm still in contact with today. A couple of them I've even continued to work with on and off over the years. They were all colleagues in the past, and they've all given me, at various times in my career, some really useful mentoring, some of that guidance, having been there and made some of these mistakes before. So two of them you may recognize from series 1 and 2, way back in the day. And then the third is Stuart Vincent, who is probably the best mentor I've ever had. Definitely an excellent friend to have a few beers with as well. And you will see more of him in episode 200 in about an hour's time. Well, actually, maybe less than an hour if you've been listening to this episode all the way through. So firstly, it's Jonathan Sumner, who at the time of this interview, back in early-ish 2022, I think it must have been, he was running a brewery as a social enterprise. He's since moved on, returned to his aerospace roots. But there's some really meaningful conversations we had and a meaningful lesson in this clip, I think, that's worth remembering.
There was always this social enterprise dynamic in the background anyway, and a desire to make the business the type of business of the future that was in business not just for profit but for purpose. And it was about us giving us a chance to focus on what that purpose should be. I'd been running a really amazing project in Africa, working with smallholder coffee farmers, helping them deal with the impact of climate change using satellite-based technology, and it transformed me. I'd learned a huge amount. Firstly, I fell in love with Africa, the most amazing place. I'd travelled so much of the world, but the one place I hadn't been, or the one continent I hadn't been, was Africa, and I really discovered how amazing it is there. I also was brought to understand that those most affected by climate change are smallholder farmers, whether they're farming coffee or other crops. They're the ones really suffering from the impact of climate change, and it made me want to do something about it. And I realised that there was a great African tradition of brewing local beers, largely using grains like millet and sorghum. and millet is the magic grain. Millet is the grain they should be growing because it grows so well in areas hit by climate change, particularly arid and semi-arid areas. And I began to form this idea that maybe we could help smallholder farmers by developing a commercial market for millet in the brewing industry. And that kind of put the purpose together for us about Citizen Brew. Purpose and profit, not just profit anymore. That's the business of the future.
Absolutely. I think that, what you were saying about the projections always being overly optimistic, I think that's true of every entrepreneur and every business owner ever in the history of the world.
And you know what? I'm a marketeer, so I've always been on the creative side of business. I've never served my time in the accounts department or in finance.
Sorry, I thought you were going to make a joke about creative accounting there. So.
Yeah,
well dodged.
No comment. But it's funny, I've taught myself to use spreadsheets. I've taught myself to do financial models. I've done all of that, and I get quite proud of myself in that I can put a financial model together. Yeah. I struggle so hard to make it conservative enough.
Yeah.
And I'm sure every entrepreneur does that, because your instinct is to say, I have to be able to do this at least, don't I? I really think I should be able to achieve that.
Yes.
And then you try and shave it down and be more. And then, of course, the red ink starts appearing in your bottom line, and that's scary, because then you think, well, that's just admitting failure, and so you put it back to the black. The reality is life, and the world out there is not going to be as kind. So, hard lesson.
Yes, it is a tough one, isn't it? Similar experience, but I guess in the opposite direction for me. I've had to teach myself marketing.
Oh, that's easy.
No, spreadsheets are easy. Marketing is not.
Oh, look, none of it's easy, is it? Let's be realistic.
Well,
we can be honest with each other.
Yeah,
none of it is easy.
Fair enough.
Business is not easy.
Fair enough. But, if it was easy, it would be a lot less worth doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Then secondly, it's my conversation with Paul Majmada about how to launch your own space company. So this clip was actually his leadership hero, bearing in mind this was back in 2021, maybe early 22. I can't remember exactly, but the answer he gives might place it. For those of you who are football fans, you can probably date it better than I can.
So this one's a bit of a tricky one.
It's meant to be.
You can go through, and it's depending on your knowledge of history, mine being a little bit weak, but there are so many leaders that you look at, and equally, when you look into them, when you read into them a little bit more, you find out the warts and all side of it. So I think it's tricky for anyone to be a particularly perfect leader. So that being my excuse for not giving somebody necessarily, but what I will say is that the person I was impressed by, and whether or not this stands the test of time, I'd say Gareth Southgate I was impressed by this year, not necessarily because of the results. Right, England made the final of the European Championships, and some of the matches were pretty dire during the tournament. And after watching one match, I swore I'd never watch England again. But I think if I take that outside of the sheer playing context, and did we win? No, we didn't win. But have we improved? Have we been a lot better than we have been over all of the years I've been watching football? Arguably, yes. But I think for me, what I was impressed by was the way that he seems to have taken, what is, the England football team was always a bit of a sideshow of celebrities and wags and, national newspapers building people up and knocking them down. He seems to have taken that out of the mix and taken the ego and personality out of the team. The team very much seemed to be a bunch of guys that like kicking a ball around, that wanted to play football with each other, and for a nation to a certain extent. To me, for him to change that culture, dealing with people that get paid, £300,000-400,000 a week. They have their agents telling them they're the best things and doing this. You've got the national newspapers saying, why haven't you picked that player? Why didn't you pick that player? And, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? To take all of that and actually seemingly just get a bunch of guys to run around, kick a football, do reasonably well, and then actually deal with the highs and lows of the tournament. Some of the highs of the great goals and some of the great games that we played, and then down to the crashing lows of the guys that missed the penalties in the final, but then were supported by their manager and their teammates post-match, with all of the social media reaction and the words that came out of the manager, the way that he addressed that and took people aside and spent time with people, and in the background he's working with those players and managing their expectations and helping them through the difficult times. I know we only see a certain part of it, but I was just impressed with the way that he's changed what seems to be a bit of a toxic publicity culture into what football should be, is just people playing sport, excelling at a sport, doing well and working as part of a team.
And then finally, of course, a quick bonus clip to foreshadow episode 200, actually taken from a behind-the-scenes test recording we did before the full episode, but it's some thoughts, some conversations with Stu Vincent, my mentor and friend. It's interesting, like you were saying earlier about it was pretty much like 38 years, but one job, more or less. But actually, it wasn't, was it? You moved around fairly frequently, I reckon. And actually, like, you compare that to the private sector during that era, where people would just literally do the same job for 30 years.
Yeah.
In a way, you're probably quite lucky. Whereas, these days, people change their job every year, don't they? It's like
that's why I loved it. That's why that's why I absolutely loved it. Going from working one of the first live aircraft I ever worked on after training was a Britannia.
Oh, cool.
Was a Britannia.
Yeah.
Second, VC-10. Third was a Belfast.
Nice.
I then go out to the Persian Gulf, to a place called Madeira. Not knowing when I stepped off the aircraft, I was in a war zone. Because it was one of the country's private wars, secret wars.
Right.
No media, no nothing. Absolutely. And the Doha conflict in 72 was at its peak. And while I was there, I worked on Skyvans, Caribou, Strike Masters.
Oh, Caribou's cool airplane.
I worked on Andovers, R1 Nimrods, Vulcan, Victor, Canberra, there you go, PR9s, PR13s, PR9, sorry, and B1, B2s coming through, and then the two Hercs. So it was just, and then after that, I get sent back I end up at St. Athens, thinking I'm going on my fitness course. No, I arrived and was on, guess what? Buccaneers.
Oh, nice.
During the 1384 mod, which was changing the small air intakes to the larger intakes for the larger engines.
Yeah.
And my introduction from the flight lieutenant was, well, you don't have SACs working on here. It's JTs only. Go out and see Flight Sergeant so-and-so. He'll give you a job to keep you busy while I get you posted. And 18 months later, I was still there nailing rivets with the sergeant. And because he said, can you rivet? I said, yeah, I can rivet. And off we went. Is from the tailplane running right the way down up over the spine to the back of the cockpit. There's roughly over 1,000 rivets that you've got to do stuff with. And him and I could nail it quicker than anybody else. And then it just goes on and on and on. And so you come from being an instructor teaching leadership to then running a primary maintenance team at first line on Hercules. It's just, and that's why when I'm listening to you guys talking, all these different aspects of leadership, it's so different. It is. Yeah. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Tune in later this morning for more from Stu. And then I'll leave you with a final-ish thought. If you've ever asked yourself, should I do a podcast? And then dismissed it with a second thought of, no, nobody wants to listen to me, then two things. First, ignore that second voice. Take the plunge, the risk. because it's not a very high risk. It's pretty low, actually, as it happens. And you might find out you love it. I'm so glad I tried it. I can certainly speak for myself. Can't imagine not podcasting anymore. I think I'm going to be doing this forever now, or as much of forever as I get anyway. And secondly, here's another clip from my conversation with Podmatch founder Alex for you to reflect on and hopefully come to your own answer about whether or not to start a podcast. Many people, I think, are sitting there with an idea maybe of a podcast that they might want to do one day, and they haven't done it yet. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is the age-old question in my world now, David. Should I start a podcast? Right? Like everyone, like, what do you think, Alex? Should I do it? To me, my answer is yes, but if. So yes, if you have a message that you actually want to get out, a purpose, and the purpose doesn't have to be to become the next biggest podcaster or to change the world, right? It could just be, I'm really interested in talking to people that own Aston Martins, right? Like it could be something simple, just a hobby that you have. There's a podcaster that I really respect. He's one of my favorites, Jordan Harbinger. Millions of people listen to his podcast every month. He is one of the biggest solo podcasters out there. And I asked him, like, what's the secret? He's like, man, keep it a hobby as long as you possibly can. He's like, yeah, treat it like a business with like the systems and stuff. He's like, but make it a hobby, like have fun, love what you do, have like your own purpose behind it. And he shared that. And I was like, man, that is not what I expected to hear, right? From one of the biggest podcasters on the planet. And the thing is, I think that we need to have that purpose, that message, what it is that we want to get out because of it. I think if you're just like, I want to start a podcast because I think I can make money, or because everyone else is doing it, or maybe it'll grow my influence, I think there's better options for you. I don't think that it's what you should do. But again, if you say, you know what, I really want to talk about leading with integrity, that one's taken. But let's just say like you really want to talk about it. And David, you're passionate about leading with integrity, which is something that is at my core. And so I love that. So other people that are at that's at their core, that's why they're listening to this. So just think about that. Like if you're like, I want to start one, what is the real reason? What is the real purpose? And right along with that, Dave, if I can just quickly share stats, I won't make this too crazy, but I wrote these down because I had a feeling this was going to come up. And if anyone wants to see this information, because I'm not going to try to share too many numbers, but if you go to podmatch.com/report, you can see what I'm about to share. There are about 2.7 million podcasts. So the next follow-up question, the reason I'm mentioning this is because people say, should I start a podcast? Well, aren't there already too many? There's 2.7 million, yes, but there's only 381,000 that are active. And of those active, 95% of the listenership is among 35,000 of those shows. And this is pulling out all the celebrity shows, all the big network shows that everyone would be familiar with. This is just looking at the independent level. There's 35,000 shows that have people really listening to them, 95% of listeners. It's not saturated. There's plenty of space.
So that's it. Thank you for listening or watching. Do pop along to the website if you would like to learn more about my various leadership support and mentoring services, or join my online community. I will be back very soon, this morning, in fact, with episode 200 and Mr. Stu Vincent. And as the music plays us out, those of you watching the video version can see an old bit of footage I found of myself recording the very first episode ever. The podcast, life, and even this very room have certainly changed a lot since then. So thank you for being with me. Thanks for listening or watching today. And I'll talk to you again in, well, less than an hour, depending on when it is that you're listening to this. Until then, take care of yourselves and be a leader, not a boss.